I spent a ton of time making this anime cinematic, designing, modeling, shading, rigging, and animating. I did all of this to culminate in my own 34-second cinematic piece. Now, before I can even begin showing you my process and steps though, every great work of art starts with an idea. So the day was June 5th. One of my students who now works with me came across this video and showed it to me. Something about it just inspired me for whatever reason, and so I asked him to create a quick concept around it just to give us an idea of something we wanted to make. So he then went and used one of his models to simply create an awesome cinematic to start the process. I saw this and honestly was just completely sold. I could really picture the character getting startled by some type of dragon or something, then running through the fields, and then standing looking over a beautiful blue sky. And so with this, I was ready to create my own scene and animate everything out. But wait, we have no character or anything like that at all. So the first thing to do will be to make one. I started off from a base that I modeled previously. For the design of my character, I wanted to make a ninja type of character, so first off was to make the face, and by the way, I have a whole other video just focused on this character, so you can check that out on my channel as well if you want like a more in-depth look at it. But yeah, all I did was paint in red and darkness around the face, and then color it in for the eyes as well. Then, for the hair, I went a little crazier and made a nice hairstyle that was spiky in the front and had a ponytail in the back. I then began blocking out her clothes and just refined it to have more and more detail. Clothing folds, outlines, gradients, some other random accessories, and I eventually ran it through another detailing stage, just adding accessories, scratches, folds, everything. Okay, deep breath. Now we have one more dragon to slay before we get to animating. Literally. I needed to now make the dragon, and by the way, I made a whole tutorial for you guys on this. It's free on my channel, so you would check that out as well. But to create the dragon, I just did some good old box modeling, starting off with the head, and then getting into the really long body. And I also made spikes that had a very cool pattern to make it look more appealing. I then further worked on the face, and I added many other miscellaneous details to push it to have that nice 2D look. I then got to texturing as well. Really tried to keep everything in that 2D look by adding outlines, colors, stuff like that of course, and also drawing in shadows like you can see here. And that is our dragon slain. Okay, now with the dragon created and our character done, it was time to put it all together. So before I animate or do anything like that, I first wanted to create each scene. From my experience, I found it's easier to figure out the visual development of your scenes first and then paste in your characters later, so that you can adjust your character's colors based on the scene rather than having to adjust the whole scene around what your character looks like. So I got to work. For scene 1, honestly, I spent the least time on this one, and I downloaded a free-to-use clouds image off of Pexels, slapped it in the background, and also pasted in some grass model I made previously, which I'll delete later though. Now, I thought I was being smart with this, but honestly the better thing to do was just to make a geometry nodes group for grass, so you're going to see me do that later. That was enough of a blockout for me, so then I moved on to the second scene. Now you're going to see me go back and forth between things quite a lot. That's how I like to work, because if you're looking at something for too long, your eyes get tired, whereas if you take a break from it, come back to it later, then you can kind of see it with a fresh view. Alright, scene 2. I envisioned her foot lifting off from a dirt ground, so I just started off from a simple plane, and I added some noise to the ground to make it look a bit better. I then made some dirt clumps and rocks so that it would look richer and more detailed, and now it can be a bit hard maintaining the visual development from scene to scene, so for now I just added in some foliage and pasted in that sky background again, and I'm eventually going to come back to this later once I decide more of how the first scene will look. Alright, scene 3. I used some of the initial planning from the animatic as a guide, and as I wanted it to be a dirt path in the center with grass on the sides, I modeled some simple leaves and animated them so that I could easily duplicate them around. I added in some flowers as well and did pretty much the same exact thing. As this was now in the forest, I also put in some trees also, making sure to have one close up to the camera so that it gives it that visual depth. I continued on trying to add some warmth to the scene as well, but I realized things just looked awkward since I had no actual grass there. So I created a geometry nodes group that would let me easily place grass wherever I wanted, and now that's looking a lot better. Lastly, one other thing I did was I just duplicated a bunch of leaves on the ground to kind of make it more chaotic and realistic, and also adjusted some colors. Okay, scene 4. Now thankfully this worked out really well for me for the next two scenes because all I did was rotate the camera to a side view from scene 3, and boom, I already had something to start off with. So because of that, I didn't actually have to go too crazy. You can see here, I just kind of made some minor changes to it. And I also realized one more issue, which was that the background didn't have any feel of like atmosphere like there is in nature. So what I did was create a fog object and just use the gradient for it. This allowed me to ultimately make it so the objects in the back could get more fogged out, which was more realistic. Lastly, I just felt like things looked a little bit dim and dull, so using the compositing tab, I added a glare node and just played around with it to add in some extra shine to the scene. From there, I just made some extra small details, and that was that. Alright, now for scene 5. Now I had a pretty good start for this scene, because I already had the ground done and some of the grass and trees from the previous scene, but there was this giant gap on the left side. I did know, however, I wanted her to be peering out over some type of hill looking into a sky, so I ultimately just decided to convert the ground into a cliff, and after that I added some more grass in those areas, and once that was done I tried to add in some rocks which looked like boulders at first, but I decided to just scatter them instead, which looked way cooler. Part of why this looks so awesome is because if we grayscale this image, we can see now it creates a lot of appeal in a variety of ways. For one, the rocks are varied in their shapes and sizes and rotations, but also the shine from the sun kind of gives it focus in that area, whereas the rest of the scene with just the grass and the leaves kind of gives the eye some rest. Okay, now this is a little bit out of order, but what I did at this point was I started animating now and did scene 6 last for some reason. But anyways, that's kind of like the reason part of it is already done and the character's in there, and after this we're going to start animating. So what I did was just build off of what we had for scene 5, except I added some pine trees in the front and some big clouds above it. For these clouds, I just created a shader that took the image and basically turned it into something anime style. It took some experimenting, but ultimately what was important was to have a highlight and shadow color, and then a little bit of bleeding in between the two. Okay guys, before moving on to animation, I had to refine some of the colors in my scenes. So in scene 1, for example, I added in some trees. But not only that, just made the scene way more orange overall to fit with the kind of warm sunset feel. On scene 2, I also made it more warm, but I also extended the animation so that it kind of goes behind the grass itself and kind of has that cool look. Now for scene 3, really all I did was just made it more orange overall and also refined the detail on the dirt a little bit. For scene 4, once again, just made it more orange and a bit more contrasted as well. And once again, did the same exact thing for scene 5. And scene 6 you guys have seen already, but pretty much. I just refined the dirt area a bit and made everything a bit more warm. Okay guys, before we go any further, I just want to talk a little bit about my masterclass. If you're someone who's been trying to learn Blender but doesn't have a clear path, this is a program that will teach you my entire workflow for making things like anime-style characters, beautiful scenes, and just amazing stylized art in general. It's one of the only comprehensive curriculums on this that exists, and is suitable both for beginners as well as people who are more experienced and want to level up their stylized art skills, or just become a better 3D artist in general. We focus both on technical skills as well as observational skills, meaning technical skills as in how to use Blender efficiently, as well as the observational skills of design and stuff like that, because without that your art is going to look flat no matter how well you can use Blender. So if you're interested in joining me and hundreds of other students, you can check it out on ukiyo-girls.io. Okay, back to the video. Alright, now time for animating. For animating my characters, I animate keyframes on every other frame for pretty much all of the animation. Now what this means is I make poses for every other keyframe in the timeline and keep it in constant interpolation, so that it gives it that 2D feel. So you can see here I'm just animating her for scene 1, and I want to make something very clear here guys. To make a better animation you need to make or find reference, as without this you just won't have as better of an understanding of the motion or intricacies of the body. I actually got up and I have a tripod for my phone and just recorded myself literally doing this. So I record myself, but then in the animation I push that further. Like for example when she gets excited here, I make it so that she squashes and stretches a bit, which helps to make it more exaggerated than how it actually looks in reality. Now for scene 2, this was like really simple, literally just me animating these feet shuffling. I didn't even really do much with the body. I could definitely have spent more time on like the shoe design and stuff like that though, but really just didn't feel like it since it's such a short scene. Okay, so for the next few scenes, the process was very repetitive. I just animated a run sequence for her in place, which saved me time because then I could just move around the route and let the run cycle play out. Now since her just running would be very vanilla, in scene 4 I made it so that she jumps over a wooden log to break up the monotony a bit. And for this close-up shot here, I actually added in-betweens to make it feel more smooth, as the movement in that close-up part just didn't really feel that pleasing enough. One of the other interesting things to animate was her slowing down towards the end. At this part, I had to manage both her slowing down as well as the stride of her legs getting lesser and lesser in terms of its distance, and then also leaning down to put her hands on her knees and catch her breath, so that was pretty fun. Okay, now last thing was to animate the dragon. What made this really easy was my tool I developed. It's called the Windy Armature add-on and has an overlapping action feature. So I literally just positioned the head bone and animated it, and then calculated the overlapping action for all the tail bones, which allowed me to create an animation of the dragon flying with ease. Now let's talk about making the colors of our character match the scene. It was simple overall, I just made it so that the highlight colors were more orange and that the shadow colors were darker. Another thing was I opted to use custom face lighting, meaning face lighting I draw in myself so that I can have maximum control. This is important because tune shaded lighting can be a bit annoying and inaccurate, so for a cinematic like this, I prefer to just make custom lighting and turn it on and off for different frames. And so I just did the same thing for the other scenes as well. Okay guys, so without further ado, here's the final result. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed my work. If you want to learn more about like my journey and what it was like for me learning to make all this types of stuff, check out this video on my channel. Also tells you like what you can take away from that, how you can improve faster as well. And if you want to learn to make high quality stylized art in Blender like I do, check out the top link in the description, it's my masterclass. And yeah, have an awesome day guys.